And so that's difficult for us to kind of not take responsibility for the entire world. We're not very good at delegating. I think that that's another thing that can help all of us as teachers is, making sure people know we trust them to get a job done, and it's not always going to be perfect. But the more we trust other people to do things that they can do, with the more a little healthier and a little more focused. And I also think, again, having some outside activities or having outside foci, so that we appreciate what we do all the time. If we go to bed and get up thinking band all the time, then we never step back and appreciate it. So it's really important to do.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to Everything Band, a podcast that features conversations with composers, conductors, and performers of music for winds and percussion. My name is Mark Connor. I'm a composer and educator, and each week I have the good fortune to speak with and share the stories and wisdom of musicians and leaders in the band community. Are you planning to travel with your group sometime soon? If so, please consider my sponsor, Kaleidoscope Adventures, a full-service tour company specializing in student group travel. With a former educator as its CEO, Kaleidoscope Adventures is dedicated to changing student lives through travel, and they offer high-quality service and an attention to detail that comes from more than 25 years of student travel experience. Trust Kaleidoscope's outstanding staff to focus on your group's one-of-a-kind adventure so that you can focus on everything else. The Everything Band podcast is a proud member of the Music Teachers Development Podcast Network. The Muted Network provides support in the form of audio-on-demand programming designed by and for music educators. You can find more information about our network at mutedpodcasts.com. Before we begin, I'd like to thank all of you for listening. I appreciate your time and hope that you are finding value from these interviews. I rely on word of mouth and social media to bring the show to new listeners. If you think you know one or two people who might find these interviews useful, please let them know about it. You can also help by following me and sharing posts on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and YouTube. Remember, help your students live up to the best that is in them through music. And now my next guest, Susan Smith. Hi, Susan.
Hi, Mark.
Thanks for joining the show. It's been a little bit of I took a little time off, so you're the first guest in a little bit. I'm happy to have you.
I'm so honored.
Yeah. So, Susan, can you introduce yourself for my listeners? Tell them who you are and what you do.
Absolutely. My name is Susan Smith. I'm a lecturer in music education at Troy University in Troy, Alabama. I have the opportunity to teach horn and most of the music ed classes here at Troy. I was a high school, middle school band director for over 20 years in Virginia and in Alabama and Florida. I taught general music there for a little while. And so we live in Troy, Alabama now. And I'm also a consultant for Music for All, an educational consultant. And recently I've been appointed to the President's Cabinet for NAFME, in charge of the Teacher Education Council. So I'm excited about that.
So, Susan, prior to Troy, you were a middle school band director for a long time?
Yeah, for 10 years, I was at the St. James School and taught middle school and high school band, 6 through 12. So if they didn't know it coming into high school band, I only had one person to blame, myself. And that was, we hadn't really planned on teaching or being there in Montgomery, but my girls were going to go to school there. We moved back to Troy. Robert had that opportunity to come back here, my husband, and teach music industry. And the teacher who was there, band, had decided to leave. And I honestly didn't want my kids learning from a first-year teacher. I didn't want Madison to learn clarinet from a first-year teacher. So I applied for the job. And we just had a great time as a family, as my girls' middle school and high school band directors, both of them. And my husband wrote all the music for the high school marching band. And it was really an experience that I wouldn't want to trade at all. Mm-hmm. Before that, I taught general music 3 through 5 in Florida and then in Virginia for some years before that. Yeah.
So before my listeners, maybe they've figured it out, but your husband is Robert W. Smith.
He is indeed.
Episode 150. You guys are actually my third couple.
Oh, wow.
I had Tiffany Hitz and Andrew Hitz and the Floyds.
Oh.
So now you and Robert.
we're in good company.
Absolutely. So
great folks.
Absolutely. But this interview is about you, not about Robert or anyone else. And so, Susan, can you tell me your origin story? How did you get involved in music as a kid?
Yeah. Actually, I come from a music family. My mom was one of the first female band directors in the Commonwealth of Virginia. She taught same middle school and high school in the Shenandoah Valley, and then elementary schools in Fairfax County for many years. My dad was a teacher as well. So we were involved very early in music there. My mom, actually, her mother was asked to leave the Mennonite church for having bought her daughter a clarinet to be in the band. They became Methodists pretty quick after that. But so music was always around and a part of what we did. You know, the district band parties were at my house after. All these great conductors. I remember Frank Wicks and others just being around and being a part of it. And there wasn't really much else that I knew much about other than music. My brothers are both involved. My one brother is a college band director, and my other brother's been involved for many years through marching programs. And so it was just something that we all kind of did. It was a family activity for sure. I went to James Madison University in Virginia. I had Pat Rooney as my college band director, and Mike Leyland was my high school band director, who I owe much to both of those gentlemen. And I like I said, I taught for years in Virginia, but I really I love the experience that I had in Fairfax. Coming up, I had the opportunity to lead and do many things that most people my age would not have had the opportunity, from helping run district band auditions as a high school junior and senior, and just being around the activity for most of my life.
Yeah, it certainly helps. I'm the son of two teachers, and I remember running around the high school. They weren't band teachers, but I remember that those days.
Oh, absolutely. Both our girls grew up around when they were young. Robert was director of bands here for a little bit at Troy. And I would say if they saw somebody in a uniform as little children, they would just put their hands up for somebody to pick them up, because you must be good if you're in a band uniform. You know, it doesn't matter which band you're in. But they grow up running around a football field, and it has an impact for sure.
Yeah, and both of your daughters are music educators. They
are. They drank the Kool-Aid early, I like to say. One is a choir teacher in Pinellas County. Madison is in her second year teaching, and Savannah is in her fourth year teaching. She's now middle school band director in Fayette County at Bennett's Mill Middle School. So feeding
Myra Roden's program.
Dr. Myra Roden, yeah, Savannah is thrilled to be there to have such a mentor as Myra, and a strong administration.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I really admire Myra a lot. Was a wonderful interview, and I'll never forget. I'll never forget her first email back to me was, "How did you pick me?" She kind of gave me that.
Well, the thing that's so great about Myra is, you know, we're all trying right now to figure out ways to get different types of students and females, girls involved in our programs, and she has been setting the trend and doing those things for long before it was trendy. Mm-hmm. She has made an impact on all kinds of students and music educators across the country. And again, we're just thrilled Savannah has the opportunity to be with her.
Absolutely. Perfect role model.
Mm-hmm.
So Susan, you know, you said you came from your mom was a band director. So obviously you had an idea that that's what you were going to be, but do you remember the moment when you knew for sure that music was going to be your profession?
You know, we all kind of go through those moments of, is this really what I want to do, or if it's just because it's the family trade, you know. But you know, I remember great performances in my university experience. We had the opportunity to play at CBDNA in New Orleans. That was pretty pivotal. And then also as a college drum major, James Madison, I keep seeing this video of our performance at Grand Nationals. I had the opportunity to conduct on the back sideline, Russian Christmas music, and conducting things that were 3 and 4 seconds different than what I was hearing, you know. Mm-hmm. It could be kind of a scary moment, but I knew those were pivotal times. And I also had the opportunity for 2 years of college to be what we call a swag at Music for All, or Bands of America. It's their summer symposium. I was a camp counselor for 2 summers, and just to be able to be around such wonderful music educators and see the impact that they had on students. Back then, we used to get a week with Dr. Tim, and I don't think that anybody gets a week with Dr. Tim anymore with anything. But it again was it was a pivotal time where I learned that servant leadership was where I wanted to be, and it meant more to me than anything to have an impact on anyone really, but on students for sure. And music was the way that I could do that the best, I felt like.
Yeah, there's sort of a couple threads that are starting to emerge here. You said your mom was one of the first female high school band directors in Virginia?
She was one of the first female band directors, yes, for sure. She was first band director at Broadway High School and 1 year at Gloucester High School. And then just before I was born, they moved to Fairfax County. And Keith Taylor, who was a music supervisor there for many years in Fairfax, actually was in her beginning band. She started him on trumpet. So just again, to have that opportunity to be around so many music teachers and have them just kind of be part of the family, I didn't want to be anywhere else.
Your mom, and then you mentioned that you were a drum major at James Madison, and I know that Savannah was a drum major at the University of Alabama. There's sort of there's a tie there between the three of you.
Yeah, and actually, both of my girls were my drum majors in high school. I always said if they earned something, it wasn't because I picked them. Someone else was going to have to pick them, and it's sometimes harder to be the band director's kid, because the expectation is that you're going to be there all the time, but you're never going to get the credit for it. I think all three of us, none of us won the John Philip Sousa Award. We all won the Gilmore Award for service. So I think that says a little bit about us. But yeah, I loved my time as a college drum major, and it actually saved me from. I had thought about transferring at one point. I thought, boy, is this really where I want to be and what I want to do? And it was one of the things that I felt like I did well, and I knew that I enjoyed conducting. I enjoyed being in that role, just in terms of supporting and finding ways to give back. And then Savannah at Alabama, she was drum major there for 3 years. It was such a joy for us to be able to follow her and the $1 Million Band to so many performances in large stadiums, and to see her face up on that billboard is just, on the scoreboard was pretty thrilling. And it's a big band, obviously, and the expectation is they're going to play every down. So we certainly learned a lot about college football, and it was great times for sure.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, one of the things that's common among my guests is that a lot of you were college drum majors. That's a really common trait.
Yeah, I think that in high school we give so much, and then is an opportunity. It's really band director in training, because all of the things that you do on the podium and the things off the podium. I remember when I was teaching Savannah's band camp, when she was first a teacher, the drum majors asked me if I'd watch them conduct. Miss Smith, we watch us conduct? And I was like, no, not right now. Why don't you go fill this cooler? Because for me, at that point, I knew that they were going to learn how to conduct, but learning to give and be a leader in that moment was really where I felt like they needed to be. And one of the things that has continued to give back as well for me.
Okay. So specific, I'm going to get a little more specific now. Do you have anything that you learned from your mom, the band director? Was she your band director?
She was not my band director. She actually, she passed away in my second year of teaching. And we had a little bit of that at one point, that mother-daughter relationship, where you don't get along with your mom. But I was fortunate for most of college. We were best of friends. And she had the opportunity to mentor many student teachers herself and young teachers. And so some of the quotes that we attribute to her are teach for the long haul. That's one that sticks in my head for sure. To not try to pine for something else, but and also not to make that snappy comment or whatever at that moment with that child. Know that there's going to be a tomorrow, and to really teach for the long haul. That's the one that really sticks out in my mind. I also learned to make lists from her. She would have 3x5 cards all over the kitchen table with lists and things. And I do it now, but in Notes apps on my phone. It's exactly the same.
That's a really great piece of advice, teaching for the long haul. And that's something that's hard right now, because there's a lot of sort of sustained trauma going on, and people are sort of sheltered into like day-to-day living right now.
Yeah, I did a webinar the other night with Darcy Williams, and we talked a little about how our expectations for right now can't be what they used to be. We can't beat ourselves up because we're not going to be what we were before the pandemic right now every day. We have to decide what our objectives are and have it be healthy for us and our students. And we really just have to engage them. We have to keep them in the program. That really needs to be our number one goal, in my opinion. Because we're going to have to reteach. We're going to have to fill in the gaps all over the place. Savannah said that's what she feels like her goal is as a teacher this year, is to make sure she's filling in gaps from last year, and if there's other things that they didn't get along the way.
Oh yeah, there's no doubt. It's a struggle right now in that way. It's, we've heard it said a lot now, but it's Maslow before Bloom this year.
Absolutely. We have to make sure that they've had something to eat and are ready for our classrooms. The other thing that I learned from my mom, and then also, and she would say it, but I really learned it teaching at a pre-K through 12 private school, where it was very transient, and the band could be different every year. I would just expect for it to be different every year. And I really taught me to teach the ones standing in front of me, as opposed to the one, you go to festivals, sometimes they say, boy, it'd be great if you had another tuba. It's like, well, I'd love to go buy one at Walmart, but right now I don't have one. I have to teach the ones in front of me to make the best sounds I possibly can and be the best ensemble I can. And that, I think, is one of the things that we could really be thinking about right now, is to make sure that we're not so stressed about what we don't have and what we can't do, but what we can do with who we do have.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I was going to say that for a little bit later, but this is a segue. One of the things I was going to ask you about, and your husband publishes music and is a composer, and we're seeing this huge rush and huge push to create more flex band music. And for someone like me who teaches at a small private school, I love this beyond this year. This is going to make it possible for my students to play pieces that they wouldn't normally have access to.
Absolutely. Well, flex band isn't a new concept. It's been around for a long time, and especially those of us who've been places where we have an unusual instrumentation. It's been something that's been very, very helpful. I do appreciate how the industry has really kind of jogged to make sure that they're meeting the needs of the teachers, because, I remember vividly March 12th coming home we were at the Music for All National Festival, and things were just falling apart around us. And I said to Robert, I don't think we're going to see any students in person again this year. And nobody's going to buy a bit of music. And both of those things were exactly what happened. Mm-hmm. And, the people that have adjusted and tried to meet the needs, I think, are the ones that will continue to be around. But it certainly has taken a hit on every part of the industry. We think about missing all these clinics and conferences and things, but it's not, besides the fact of not being together, these vendors have taken such a hit in terms of their income that it'd be difficult for them to think about being at shows or shipping things or those kinds of things. It's taken a toll on everybody. It has forced a lot of people to become flexible and to come up and to just rethink about their philosophy on who and what they are. Because between us or everybody else, there are people that are thinking of themselves right now as, quote, educational writers, who maybe a year ago that might be not something that they would have said out loud.
Interesting. That's interesting.
And for me, the music is our curriculum, so it's all about education, and we have to make sure that we're not going to have students to play great symphonies if we don't start playing those first 5 notes at the very beginning. So training them and having them enjoy being in music is pretty key to keeping them and making sure that we have them later on. So I don't think that we can dismiss the importance of fundamentals and things that are engaging for students.
Yeah, I just want to follow up. When I said the flex band, I know there's been flex band, but now we have pieces that have never been available in flex band.
Absolutely.
That are suddenly there.
Yeah, composers are taking a look at that. I mean, no one is really renting music right now. So it has actually kind of forced some composers to step back and look and what their, again, philosophy is for them and their publishers. We are right now putting together some things with RWS ourselves of taking pieces that have been successful and the bands have liked and band directors have liked and retrofitting those. But it also has been something, for Robert as the editor, to make sure that those are in the format that can be useful for teachers and that they can be as flexible as possible for them to be able to use in their classrooms and help them be successful.
So, Susan, you mentioned a little bit earlier that you servant leadership. I was wondering if you could kind of expound on that and talk a little bit more about that concept for the listeners.
Well, I guess it's just basically the idea of obviously putting others before you and how you can help others. It's such a joy for me to be able to see the success of my students or how I can assist someone else. There's a lot of people that are not necessarily into teaching for themselves, because most teachers are we don't get into teaching because we don't like people and we don't like kids. We do it because we have this servant heart to give to other people. And it's hard for some people to kind of understand that, but I get great joy from helping others and putting the needs of others before myself. And that won't be something that gets written up in a newspaper or gets plastered all over somewhere, a prize or something. But having a child, see that and give back themselves, or have them be a better human to someone else because of your role model, that's priceless.
Absolutely. I think it's part of why those of us getting into teaching, we're in a calling profession.
Yeah, it's something that it's difficult, especially in these times where, teachers were at one point not feeling very valued and then feeling very valued. And then now we're back to, in some ways, feeling like there's the stress of the world is on us because, we're having to reinvent what we do every day. We're building the plane as we fly it, kind of thing. But if anybody could do it, it would be teachers, because that's really what we learn in our music classrooms and also as teachers, is to be creative and to be problem solvers. And that's what the world is looking for and don't have enough of today. Teamwork and creativity, I think, are things that we learn again and is what makes we're drawn to this. There are a lot of teachers that do additional things to make that income happen or find different ways to do that. Again, our daughter Savannah has really been engaged with some entrepreneurial things. She's created an online Poshmark store and she resells on eBay and Amazon. It's really kind of interesting how people have these different outlets. And I think that's pretty important to keep ourselves healthy mentally and also even physically in these times.
Mm-hmm. Speaking of mental and physical health and social media, one of the things you've been doing is this exercise challenge. It's been a couple months now. You've had a couple, right?
Yeah, I didn't know about myself that I was so goal oriented. I wish I had known. I wish I had known 20 years ago that this was me. But as teachers, we always have goals for our students or benchmarks, or in rehearsal we want to be at this place, and that's easy for us to set. And it hasn't always been easy for me to do that for myself. Again, part of that servant leadership is that putting others before myself. I don't always, as my husband says, you always got to put the mask on yourself before you put it on your child in the airplane. And sometimes I'm not very good at that. And so over the last couple of years, I've really, because of support from some friends and also my daughters, realized that I needed to start moving a little bit more, and I needed to take care of myself. Both my mother and grandmothers had their first heart attacks at 42. I have not. And so I felt like it was something I just wanted to be on the front edge of. And so, in May, I saw Sonia Williams, who is our Southern Division president for NAFME, had put up, I just saw her put a hashtag, 5K a day in May. 5K a day in May. And I thought, I could do that. I could just run a 5K every day. And it was amazing how I started looking forward to it, and other people just kind of jumped on the bandwagon. And you mentioned Tiffany. I know she was a part of it, and Lori Reichel, and just this camaraderie we found out of nowhere online. And our president of AMEA, David Rainey, asked me to chair as past president a couple of committees. I think he was trying to keep me busy, keep me out of his hair or something. I'm not sure, but he asked me to chair our health and wellness committee, and I started just thinking about that hashtag and how it just really motivated me by somebody just saying one thing. And I kind of ran it by my social media team, my girls, and my nephew Turner Hawkins. He's one of the band directors at Dobbins Bennett, and he's got all these posts on Instagram. I said something to him once about it, and he said, "Aunt Sue, I'm 10 years ahead of you on Instagram." I was like, okay, I get it. But just coming up with a hashtag, and I thought, well, October is a tough month for teachers. And if we could just have something to look forward to, because we don't have a lot of holidays, and get people out there moving and thinking that, we give so much, we could take 31 minutes for ourselves every day this month. So, when you challenge other people to do that, you got to make sure you're doing it yourself. So I've had a couple of like last night, we got home late from moving Madison to Tampa about 10:30. I was like, Robert, I got to do it. He's like, I know. So I got on the treadmill and the bike and just moved a little bit. So I felt like I had met that goal. And, there's been several people, Chip Kratz from the Blue Devils, and Jeff Harper have just said, thanks so much for kind of being the impetus. It's made me think about this, and I've gotten back to doing it. So it's fun to have that kind of impact, and it also kind of reinforces what we say to our students, that you don't have to have a title to be a leader. The way we lead by influence these days. People are influenced not by because we have to do it. That's how our band directors maybe taught us, or the ones before that we had to do it because we had to do it. Now people want to do it because Mark Connor does it, or because they see it on Instagram, or they see someone else be successful. So it's been fun to connect with people, and it won't be something I do every month, but it pushes me and it connects me with teachers. I'm connected now, people in the Northeast and even and other places in the South, and I've really enjoyed it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, I've been watching it with fascination, thinking to myself, I should do that, and then not.
Well, and the other part is that my husband Robert and I have committed to start lifting together. That was kind of the next thing for me. And he used to lift a lot of weights when he was a young band director, and kind of got out of it. And for both of us, as we're getting a little bit older, making sure that you still have muscle and bone density, those kinds of things are all really important. So we've started lifting 3 days a week, and he's really taught me a lot about that. And we've enjoyed just that committed time of going to the gym together, and we just do the machines there and do our circuit and get out. And like I said, in terms of a couple, having that commitment of time that we're going to just spend together has been really fantastic.
Yeah, no doubt. We're going to talk a little bit more about work-life balance, so I'm sure it'll come back up, but it's really a great way to kind of keep your mind off of, everything that's going on.
Even just walking together, right now with families, it's been a little unusual because everybody's been together so much. And, I don't know if it's just us or what, but we haven't gotten sick of each other, I don't think. And we've tried to find ways to just enjoy the time that we have together and not take any day for granted.
Mm-hmm. Sure. Absolutely. So Susan, can you tell me a little bit about what you do now at Troy?
Absolutely. We had the opportunity where our music ed students only take one class in education in the Department of Education or the College of Education at Troy. We have a wonderful relationship between the music department and the College of Education. In fact, our new dean was a former drum major of the Sound of the South Marching Band at Troy University when he was here. So as an undergraduate. So we feel like we're very lucky that way. But some years ago, my dean, Larry Blocker, who you might know from Teaching Music Through Performance and Band, that series he wrote with Dick Miles. He and our associate dean had the opportunity to ask for us to be able to teach some of those classes. They were conflicting in the College of Education with our ensembles, and those students were on scholarships. So I have the opportunity to now teach some of those classes. So, for instance, I teach an intro to education class. I teach curriculum and instruction and our methods and materials this semester. And then next semester, I'll have the opportunity to teach ed psych and assessment and our classroom management class. That plus most of the horn studio. And so for me, it was difficult in transition in some ways from having a band to teach every day to teaching music ed and studio. But for me, I felt like, well, I have an opportunity to have more of an impact on even more students because I'm getting to teach the teachers how to be teachers. And that's really just been a joy to watch them blossom and move on and get jobs and ask for advice and have the opportunity to mentor them. It's been the highlight of my career for sure.
Mm-hmm. In your opportunity to work with these young future band directors and young band directors, what are the things that they ask the most or that they're learning in their first experiences?
Well, the things that I really focus on is that, first of all, that they're my colleagues. Early college, people do work in classes just to get it done, as opposed to gaining the information or doing it till it's never wrong. And that's the things we learn early in our careers is that we're not getting the program done just to get it done. It has to be right. And I think that's one of the biggest challenges for them is, we all like to check boxes and get that assignment done. But if it's not great, then it's not going to be something that's going to be successful in the classroom. And I think just getting them some hands-on experiences. We start actually this week in my methods class some teaching experiences, teaching their peers. And so, we've been watching some of the after sectionals videos and watching real teachers and the pacing that has to happen and give it. And I'm going to give them some classroom management things where people will be misbehaving on purpose in class to see how they will deal with it. But I think just preparing them for what real life is, even though, again, my classes last semester, we had to pretty much zig and zag in the middle because I had to start teaching more about, well, how do you do classroom management for online and in a Zoom situation and how are we going to teach this? Because that's not really what we were teaching at all, So I was glad I had the opportunity to kind of share some of those things with them as they were leaving me to go student teach. I teach those two capstone classes, methods and curriculum. And so those are the classes they take right before they go student teach. So it's for sure, it weighs heavy on me every day that, boy, I gotta cram a lot of stuff in because I don't want them to not know something that I stay up at night worried that they're going to have experiences that they won't know how to deal with. And they know I'm always going to be here and that the other professors are going to be there. But I take it very seriously that they walk out. I say I can't tell you about every situation, but I at least can give you the skills to deal with as many as possible.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, that's the one thing anyone who's taught for a while knows is that you can't predict what's going to happen.
Clearly. Not this year. We can't.
Well, I mean, I've taught for 25 years and every day there's something that surprises me. It doesn't really matter.
Yeah.
So it's interesting. One of the things I picked up on is pacing. I started to teach fourth graders for the first time in my career 2 years ago. And that was actually something that even with my experience, it really took a little bit of time that the younger they are, the more the pace has to be high.
Yeah. When I taught 3 through 5 general music, I mean, first of all, I had never worked harder in my life. Those 3 years, you have 700 of them in a school, you see them once a week and you don't know any of their names. And then you got to do a bulletin board. I was like, where are the band parents? Come do the bulletin board. I don't know how to do this. But yeah, just keeping them on task and keeping them doing. That's, talk less, play more, talk less, sing more. That's why they're there. That's what they want to do. And I think that's another transition for the students to learn is how to, Peter Boonshaft talks about, I think it's him, about forward sentences, or just being as concise as possible within the classroom so that you're not pontificating because they don't hear you past the first sentence or so, but keeping things moving. And like I said, those after sectionals videos with Darcy, her and her crew there, they are just so good at it at the middle school. And she said, I was on a webinar with her last week, and she said, I gotta tell you, at the very beginning, I was a yeller. It took me 10 years to realize being quiet is scarier than being a yeller. And I think that's, again, part of the transition is for them to realize they're the grown up in the room. When you're in college, I say you're always going to be a leader from now on. You're a leader of yourself. You're going to be a leader of other people, and you're going to be the teacher. You're the one that's responsible for it. So getting them to think of that transition and not be scared of it and know that they're prepared for it.
Yeah, there's no doubt. It's really hard. You give young students a single crack and they will take it in time.
Absolutely. They see that kink in the armor, or they will run with it. But again, one of my challenges is making sure they understand is if that student is probably crying for help in some way, and how can we, rather than because they might be getting in trouble somewhere else all the time and they're not responding to that someplace else. So how can we just really dig our claws into that and find ways to help them be productive and flip that? Because they're already a leader. How can we show them to use that leadership for good and really fine tune their skills as opposed to just being another adult that is mad at them?
Yeah, you and I are kind of talking to young teachers at the moment, but I just kind of want to share an anecdote from this year, because you and I talked before I hit the record button, but I am not having fourth grade beginners this year. So my fourth graders, I'm teaching once a week music, but I didn't know what to do. So I started with bucket drumming. We did about 6 weeks of that. And it began to go off the rails a little bit for a couple of reasons. And so I switched up to computer music. So we've been doing Incredibox, Chrome Music Lab. We're going to start Soundtrap with them. And I'm telling you, the kids that were giving me the most trouble are the ones who are the most engaged with this. They are just fascinated with the technology.
Absolutely. You just have to find the things that really kind of get their brains going, and those are the ones. Obviously, they had reached their limit with that activity, and you were smart to kind of zag to something else or pivot, as we say these days.
You have to. It's really uncomfortable to be in a situation where you haven't taught something.
It is. It used to be we could stay a page ahead of them in the method book, but now, and also that's the other thing I talked with my students about. Is we can't just walk into rehearsal and start at the top and keep going. We have got to be better planners. We have got to use the time that we have, because there's a lot of places that we're only having, middle school band once a week, some places, or maybe twice if we're lucky. So we got to make sure that whatever it is we're teaching, that those are key. I've been kind of on the bandwagon of making sure that people realize that we don't necessarily teach what the title of our class is. We're teaching music, and we have to make sure right now that we're creating literate musicians who want to be there, and not be frustrated by the fact that we're not standing on a podium. And I know that's frustrating to people because they're not getting their outlet, their own musical outlet, or feeling like they're giving the most to their students. But I do think it's helping us all reflect as teachers. I think we're using techniques right now that we will use moving forward that we probably might not have had this whole pandemic not happened. Yeah,
I hope people don't have that attitude right now that it's got to be the way it's always been or not at all, because we have to be flexible, as you mentioned. I mean, these are high stakes right now as far as these kids are concerned.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I want to get back to what you said about changing to some online things. And I've always been an advocate of connecting home music to school music. We want them to be engaged in what we're doing, but then we often don't embrace the things that they like, and show them that what they like is really just an offshoot of what we're already doing in the band classroom, and taking them to where we want them to be based on what they already know. And so I encourage my students and young teachers to find a way, and honestly, oftentimes it's our veteran teachers who need to do more of this, but find a way to make a connection to what they're living every day or what they're learning every day. And they'll be more apt to want to learn what you want them to learn.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. It's also a chance for us to reach the other 80%, that old percentage, the kids that aren't in large ensembles. We can bring a lot of attention to our programs if we can engage a high percentage of the other students.
When my last job at St. James, I had a guitar class. I had started 2 levels of guitar, and I selfishly, in some ways, I wanted it to have more kids in jazz band and rhythm section and kind of try to grow that a little bit more. But I also wanted to advocate for the students who, just wanted to be able to play an instrument at Christmas or have everybody singing around and sing songs and things. And I actually ended up being a high percentage of the football team who ended up in my class. And, having them understand a little bit more about what I did every day and having me be vested in what they were doing every week, it really just made the whole atmosphere. And on Friday nights, football games, or them coming to concerts, the things that we all complain about that doesn't actually usually happen with sports, started to happen a little bit more. And also I started doing more things where they were having to explain the music selections that they liked and why did they not like other musics. And oftentimes they couldn't articulate that. So maybe it had them embrace a little bit more about why somebody else likes a type of music. My husband says millions of people can't be wrong,
That's right.
And there has to be a reason that people are drawn to it. And then we can make a connection to, this is the popular music today, but this is John Philip Sousa, and he would have been the person that was on your playlist if you had lived in this time.
Yeah.
Just to kind of, because they don't have that perspective at all. And I think that that's one of our jobs as teachers, is to bring that comprehensive idea to what we're teaching.
So what else, what other kinds of advice would you offer for young teachers or even experienced teachers from, your time?
Oh boy. For me, I think I wish I had asked for more help earlier. And it's one of the things that I tell my students is, we think we're supposed to know everything when we first come out of college or even later. And the people that I have seen be successful are the ones that have asked for help or have asked mentor teachers to come in. We all want everybody to hear the band just before concert festival, but we really need them to hear them when they're bad earlier in the year, when it's not so great. So somebody can tell us how to fix it or the things that we stop hearing. Again, with my husband, I had the opportunity to have somebody who could hold up a mirror and say, this doesn't sound very good. You need to fix this. I remember 3 weeks before festival, I was playing Charles Carter Overture for Winds, and he said, this is not going to be attainable in the amount of time that you have allotted yourself. And it was something that we played for the spring concert. I don't think we should not play pieces that are challenging for sure. But at that moment, that was what I needed to hear. And we had the type of relationship that he could tell me that. So finding people who will tell you the truth. We don't need people to not tell us the truth or tell us how great we are. We need people who will honestly help us be better, because that's really what it's about. And I think the other thing I would have said to myself, or I wish somebody had said, that mistakes are okay. We all expect ourselves to be perfect because we expect our students to. It's hard for us to listen to a piece of music or go to a concert without listening for mistakes. And that's something that is difficult, that we all kind of have that cross to bear as music teachers, but allowing ourselves to make mistakes and say, oh man, I really messed that up. I'm going to try again tomorrow, as opposed to, I don't know what I'm doing. I'm an imposter, which is sort of what happens to us sometimes. So I think that both of those are things that I would encourage someone to do. And also to help administrators know better what we need. I guess that's part of it. I didn't always have great administrators, and I was actually scarred because of that. I had to go to my first parent-teacher conference by myself, and ever since, I thought when I went to the principal's office, I was in trouble for sure. But showing them what it is we need and engaging them in the process, as opposed to oftentimes they'll just leave us alone in the music department if we're not making a fuss or there aren't a lot of parents coming to talk. And we like it that way. But I think trying to find a way to make ourselves more important to the community whole is something that I would say. And we're always flexible, but just finding ways to advocate for ourselves. We're scared of that word, advocating, but it's really about marketing ourselves and our program. And there's nothing really wrong with that. You said something about social media. I started my Facebook page to basically market for myself and for my band program and for my family. I don't use social media as a place to be negative or talk about politics. It's just not who I think as teachers we should be. There are other places, outlets for that. I think that people are always looking to us to be as positive as possible. But advocacy is marketing. Years ago, I was going through my father's things and I found this clipping. He was a tail gunner in World War II. And there was an article about he had shot down this German plane. And I thought, how in the world did that reporter know about that? And I realized that my grandmother had actually written that article and sent it to the newspaper for them to publish. And that was very big. That's what they would do. And that's what marketing is and advocacy is for our program. It's not being, there are people that boast too much. There are people that say too many things about themselves, but really it's about marketing so we can protect our programs and so that people can know what it is we do. We all think that we have so many things to do that we leave that to last on the list. And it really, especially today, probably needs to be the first thing that we're doing.
Oh, yeah, no doubt, especially now. You and Robert have been very vocal about this since March. We have to, excuse me, we have to be proactive right now, especially.
Yeah, we were both just, first of all, surprised and troubled with not only people who were not able to kind of look down the road, what plan A, B, or C needs to be. People were pretty adamant about, no, we're going to have band like we always have. And that was just not going to happen. And then just getting the word out for, from different organizations and encouraging corporations, publishers, music companies to support this whole idea of when we were doing the studies at University of Colorado and Colorado State and just advocating for ourselves so people knew what to do. This sitting around waiting for people in office to make decisions when they had no basis for it. We are the experts in music. We know what our students need. We also know where to find that information. So it's on our shoulders to communicate that information. And so many people were just waiting, and we just saw it as. And fortunately, there was this big wave. Everybody started getting on the bandwagon and realizing that teachers are their best advocates in their communities. So if we're going to decide this at the community, they have to be the ones that just get the information out. And we've been very fortunate here in Alabama. Our state superintendent, we got him to come on our AMEA, our Alabama Music Educators webinar or Zoom meeting early on. And for us to get quotes from him like, music will exist in our state after this pandemic or during this pandemic. And it's arts are priorities for us. To get him to say quotes like that really was meaningful for us and something that we could use to really support music educators in our state. And I'm very thankful that he was able to do that.
Susan, this is really hard to answer, but do you think it's going to go back to the way it was, or what's band going to look like in 2 years?
I wish I could see, but I think that it will be the best that it can be. I think music educators will always make the experience at the best they can for their students and for their communities and their schools. I hope that we will be able to get closer. And in some areas of the country, we have, with marching arts and things, been able to get a little bit closer. I do think that the focus will continue, I hope, to be on music education. I am an advocate for the visual part of the outside activity, but I think that we started to put so much emphasis on it that we the demise in some places of music. So I think that that's something that we will hopefully continue to see the fruits of that. I think that we will always be leery of it. I think that we will be more aware of student contact and how close they are and drinking from coolers. I don't think germs are going to go away. That's for sure. And I think that we are all more appreciative of what we do have and, not taking those things for granted, and just the safety of our students has to be our priority.
So, Susan, I never really asked you much about your time at the St. James School. Can you really quickly give me an overview of what that was when you were there? And also, you're married to Robert W. Smith, but how about composers that you may have worked with as a band director?
It was a wonderful experience. As I said, it was a private school, pre-K through 12. There's only about 1,000 students at the school, but it was pretty diverse. We had a lot of Air Force students and Kia students who were there coming through, and very transient. But we had the opportunity to play pieces that were way too hard for us. Our middle schoolers actually would sit in and play the third and fourth parts in many of pretty large pieces, grade 4, 5, and 6. And so we would do a lot of those kinds of things in the spring concert and even at concert festival. That is one of the things I didn't say earlier, is that not to overprogram for young teachers, because I certainly did that way too much. But so we had a chance to do lots of concert band. We, in my second year there, got really pretty involved in the small school or Class A program through Music for All. I had not planned on doing it. We went to our contest our first year, and Rob Grice, who you might know is a band composer, was one of the judges and said, "Boy, I think you could hang with some of these Class A bands." And I thought, what are you talking about? And for me, I felt like at the time, Music for All and DCI, the rubrics that they used to judge were, my school was asking for the teachers to give them a national level education. And I felt like those rubrics were the closest thing that we had to that in the marching activity. And so my first year, we went and watched a regional, which was great for them because they had a chance to watch Choctawhatchee High School win a band contest the week before. And then we went to the Atlanta Regional and they watched Choctawhatchee be 12th, which to them said, oh, you can still be really great, but there's always going to be somebody better than you. And I think that was a really great lesson for them to learn. Then we moved on to competing at a regional level. We won the Atlanta Regional several times, and then finally made it to Grand Nationals. And then we started using those as our spring trips. It was very difficult at my school in the spring to take trips because of AP testing or different things. So we started doing a large trip in the fall through marching band to kind of take the place of that. So we would go to Grand Nationals one year, and then we would go to a larger regional or super regional the years we didn't go to Grand Nationals. So we went to San Antonio twice and St. Louis. And like I said, the Atlanta Regional, and then some close regionals. We were fortunate in the Atlanta area to have several regionals here, Jacksonville State University and in McEachern, and the Atlanta Regional. So that really kind of blew up into something that I never actually expected for it to be. And it really was an amazing bonding experience for my students and for their parents. It became something that we really, really enjoyed, but didn't take away from the concert program. The concert program was strong and was really vital to it. My philosophy was I wanted to expose them to the best music I possibly could. And I with small bands, I kind of have a knack of playing older, thicker arranged band pieces because I felt like it was less exposed and my younger kids could have the same experience, but not always be kind of hung out there to dry. So, we played some Granger, we played some great pieces that I probably would not have played had I been in Texas or Florida or Virginia. But where I was, I had the opportunity to kind of expose them to that. And for me, philosophically, to hear a 7th or 8th grader walking out of the band room whistling Granger is pretty meaningful for me. That's more important for me than whatever rating would have happened, because they were exposed to that. So we didn't actually have the opportunity to do much in the way of commissioning or have composers in my school. Obviously, Robert was a band parent, so he said, I'm not going to sell any candy bars or work concessions, but I'll write your marching band pieces for you, arrangements for you. And that really worked out pretty well for us. And because he was writing not for the first or second trombone, he was writing for Henry Ulrey, the trombone player, and for, so it was pretty personalized. It pushed them, but also he knew what they could and couldn't do, and the ways to push them in that way. But in terms of like just the commissioning experience, being on the other side of it, I've had the opportunity to be at many premieres and see how that experience can really bring together a community, from, groups naming pieces, or it being about someone in the band who passed away, or something that was important in the community. It can really be a great investment in terms of just bonding of the community and the students feeling like they had a part of things. I can't speak enough to it. Unfortunately, sometimes we kind of prioritize where we spend our funds in bands. And we think nothing of spending thousands and thousands of dollars on props and maybe marching band arrangements, when we could have, encouraged 5 or 6 young writers, young composers to write for our concert bands. I think that's one of the things that has been helped in the pandemic, is we've had to kind of bring things a little bit more in balance. I'm certainly just as guilty of it myself in terms of props and those kinds of things. But I think that it's just really kind of brought a lot of things back in focus for us. But I hope the commissioning part of things, we learned back in music education history through CMP and the whole idea of comprehensive musicianship, that the children learn more when they have the context of a piece of music, and going through that commissioning experience can be just a great one for them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. Every time I've had to do a commission, those are always the best pieces. It's always the best experience.
Absolutely, because you have something to connect to. We sometimes as teachers lose that part of it in our teaching, but that's the parts that we do naturally. And that's what students are engaged with and what they learn from the most and what they remember. We all remember that great, whatever it was, music or history experience, or something that happened in some class where a teacher did a great project because it connected to our lives. We remember those things. And I think that we want students vested in our music programs having those same types of experiences, have them just really, really enjoy and connect with it even more.
All right, Susan, we should get to the final group of questions here. Where do you draw the line between healthy and unhealthy competition in music?
Well, I think that we are always competing against ourselves only, ever. That should be our only standard. I will say I am guilty of trying to, in marching band world, knowing who's going to be at what show and being a little bit of a recap reader myself. But, our students think what we think. So if we blame not doing well competitively on someone else, then we're setting a bad example. If we're not where we want to be in terms of our own standards, that's about us. That's not about anybody else. So I think that this whole idea of music in general being competitive is pretty kind of out there, because we're only competing against ourselves and against a standard. That's really what we should be in my thought.
We've talked a little bit about this next question, but where do you find work-life balance in a career as a music educator, or how do you find?
I didn't for a lot of years. We tend to want to give all the time, and I started realizing I was giving more to other people's children than I was giving to my own children, and adding rehearsals and trying to make up for some things that were missing in my own program just by adding and adding and adding. And honestly, it wasn't until I got to the college level and I had a little bit more time to think about thinking, or I had time to reflect. And I have some friends that do it really well. Linda Gammon is always goes to Maine in the summers. She cooks, she reads, she has dogs, she's somebody that has really figured it out. And I think the teachers that have some longevity kind of do. I think it's really important to, especially now when we always have access on our phones and our emails, just to set some boundaries for ourselves, because if we don't, we will always do it because we're pleasers. We want to do the right thing and we want to set a good example. And the best example we can set is by setting some boundaries to make sure we're taking care of our own health, mental and emotional and physical, so that way we can be the best teachers that we can be.
All right, Susan, this is a gigantic question. And so we've talked about COVID-19, so maybe we'll go beyond that. But what are some of the challenges facing music education in the band world, and how can we best meet them?
I had made a list of things, and we've talked about each one of those really, but I think the overarching thing is just relevance, making sure that we make sure that we are important to everyone. You talked about Savannah being drum major of Alabama. Robert Red told me about an article in New York Times about how every billboard in that stadium and how much people are paying for ads to be on there. And we hear more and more piped, canned-in music happening in stadiums. And that's a little scary because we want to stay relevant and we want to make sure that people know that music is everywhere. And if we don't teach people how to do music, then we won't have musicians. And pointing those things out. So I think trying to find ways to be relevant all the time. We think, boy, we have enough to do already, right? You want to teach the kids, you want me to be on Friday night, you want me to advocate, and you want me to be relevant. Well, I think they all kind of go hand in hand. If they think of us as key to the community in our schools and also just in life in general, then they will make sure that we're important. This idea of music's important for music's sake is pretty key, I think. We have national standards for music education and have since June Hinckley went to Congress and advocated for them. And here we are 20 years later, and music is still core. And it's actually part of the Every Student Succeeds Act, that music is a part of a well-rounded education. And for me, I think that we need to keep pointing those out. We need to not push away standards. I think we need to embrace them as music educators as, this says that we're core. So, we are relevant, and what we do is just as important as we have standards, just like math and English. So we need to stop, in my opinion, thinking less about trying to tell people that we matter and show them, make it so there's no doubt.
Yeah, I don't want to get preachy here, but I'm gonna, those standards, they give us legitimacy. And if you don't have good assessments to prove those standards, you're not helping. You need to make sure that you can provide that evidence. That's what they're there for. They give us, ground to stand on here.
Absolutely. And what we're not good about doing, we assess every day as music educators. We're just not good at putting it into verbiance that our administrators can understand.
Right.
That's all. And that's what assessment can do for us, for sure.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's not something that's scary. It's just the evidence. And, we live in a world where, legislators especially want evidence for everything.
Absolutely. And again, we do it. We just have to tell people what it is that we're doing that informal assessment when Johnny's hand is not on the trumpet the right way, just simple things like that, but just making sure that they understand that we assess every day. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. We're good at the summative thing. We're good at having a concert and then showing that.
And the summative can't happen if the formative doesn't happen. So it's just telling somebody we're already doing.
All right, Susan, I have just invented a time machine, and I'm going to take you back to the afternoon of your high school graduation. What are you going to tell yourself?
Boy. To have confidence in myself and to be weary of people, but also not to change who you are just because other people don't always make the best decisions. I honestly can say that I probably didn't start being confident in my own decisions until I was 49 or 50 years old. So in the last 2 or 3 years, I was always constantly questioning myself because I just feel a great responsibility in terms of children and parents and being a teacher. And I just somehow, I don't know what it is about hitting that 50 mark, but I've just been like, you know what? I know what I know, and I think what I think, and I'm going to share it, and I'm going to support young teachers. And you can think I'm wrong, but that's okay. I'm not gonna back down from it. So I think, again, we, with young teachers, with everybody, we have this fear that we're imposters, that we really don't know anything about what we know. And we know a lot more than everybody else does about us, for sure. And in our buildings, we know a lot more about being music teachers. So I think just embracing that and being more confident would have been something that I would have loved to go back and be my first job right now. I keep in touch with a couple of those kids, and they're just fantastic, but I just don't know how they survived me as a first year teacher because, I felt like I made a lot of mistakes. But I learned from them for sure. And so that's why I said earlier about, not being afraid of making mistakes. So those are some of the things I would tell myself.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no doubt. I'm just 49 now, going to be 50 in the spring. And it's true. It's just the last couple of years that I really feel like I can actually say things and have some expertise behind them, if that makes sense. It's an interesting time in your life.
It makes total sense. Yeah. I wish I had experienced it earlier, but I'm glad I do now, and I'm not going to waste it.
Sure. Absolutely. Absolutely. All right. So, Susan, I don't ask this question to be morbid, but more to try to find what's meaningful for you and not just like your favorite. If you had a choice, what would be the final work for wind ensemble or band that you'd want to conduct, and why?
Probably one that I've never been able to, and it would probably be Lincolnshire, just because I remember college it being so formative, playing in wind ensemble, and just such a great piece of music, and something that we hold on to as band that kind of, I wouldn't say legitimizes us, but it just has so many positive memories, and it's so happy, and it's so beautiful. That would be I think that would be my pinnacle work to be able to do, because I've only ever played in small bands. I've only ever conducted young small bands. That would never be something that I could have conducted myself. So if I had the chance in front of an ensemble that could do it, I would love to do Lincolnshire for sure. All
right. So is there anything coming up, Susan, that you'd like to share or promote?
We have been involved since the summer with Music for All. We created this, David Starnes and I, with James Stevens, this Mind the Gap webinar series, which was meant for those student teachers who were interrupted during their experience in the spring, to help with just some of the questions they might have, from interviewing to how to deal with administrators to high school, middle school. We've done things with different people on technology in the classroom. So it has really kind of blossomed, and it's something that stayed consistent. We decided to keep it going and doing it just about every 2 weeks. There was a time there was a webinar on every night during the beginning of the pandemic and through the summer. And we have just now talked about, we're going to continue it for the second semester as well. But it's just been a great time to bring teachers together to talk and have young teachers be able to ask questions. And while our numbers have fluctuated some on the live version, Music for All has put it up on their not on the Facebook page, on their website for people to access on YouTube. And we have had a great many people watching it afterwards, because, as I mentioned, a lot of people can't do their observations and things. So it's a great way for them to get some professional development. So we've been, like I said, doing it every 2 weeks, and we're staying away from Election Day. We're not going to have a webinar that Tuesday, but we'll have another one in November and then 2 more in December. It's funny you asked that about health. We're going to do one on quality of life for teachers in December. I'm going to have some people in on that. And then we're going to get going in the second semester with more of those webinars. And we've, again, had some great feedback and questions from young teachers who maybe, you don't think about it when you're an undergrad, that once you get out there student teaching, it's like, oh my gosh, I should have asked this question. And those are the kind of people that we're hoping we reach through this, and that people will continue to enjoy it, and we'll keep it going.
Susan, how can people get in touch with you?
Well, I am on social media. I have a Facebook page and also a Instagram. I'm not like my husband. I'm not over 5,000 people, so I can still take friends. But my email is susanlsmith1. Can you imagine there's another one? At mac.com, M-A-C. SusanLSmith1 at mac.com. And I'd love to answer emails or answer questions that any teachers might have.
Mm-hmm. Excellent. Susan, thank you so much for your time.
Oh, thanks for the opportunity. I've enjoyed it.